The following segment comes from a full SEC preview episode from Running Out the Clock. If you like what you hear in this segment, then be sure and subscribe to the channel so that you can catch all of our SEC previews, including whether or not we think the teams discussed in these previews will do better, worse, or the same this season. Let's jump over to 6th place in the West with the Ole Miss Rebels. Of course, the NCAA investigation's done, but there's still a lot of pieces to pick up. Now they have a chance after what was, a season of absolute transition between coach changes to quarterback being injured and backup having to take over. Now they go into the season knowing who the coach is, that the guy who took over in the season is the quarterback, that they still have a dynamic receiving core, a great offensive line, questions on defense. Chandler, you follow Ole Miss closely, being an alumna of the school. I believe that is alumna. So why don't you actually give us the breakdown here of what things will look like in Oxford?
So there are a lot of really, really great things that you can say about the Ole Miss offense. And whatever great things that you say about the offense, say the opposite about the defense. And that's pretty much how it's going to work out. I mean, you have – and so since it's way more fun to talk about, we'll start with the offense. I mean, you've got, like you mentioned, you've got a great offensive line. Greg Little is going to be a top 10 pick in the draft. But you've also got a bunch of other guys on that line that are really good. Javon Patterson's there. Sean Rawlings is there. I'm blanking on the other guys' names, but the starting five
probably
is
someone named Michael. I think.
Yeah.
There's a Michael there.
But then you've also got a bunch of guys that are behind them, so that there's actually going to be some good depth. I mean, obviously, if Greg Little gets hurt, that's a disaster because he's maybe the best offensive tackle in the country this year. But you've got guys like Royce Newman, and there's a guy named Matthews who's a tackle. I mean, it seems like all the tackles are named Matthews, and they're all from the same family. I think he's like a cousin of those guys. But
is he related to the Allens from Arkansas?
Probably, yeah. And they're distantly related to the Mannings. So it's weird. But it's fine. A lot starts with the offensive line, and I think they're going to be really good. And so you've got Jordan Ta'amu back, who I don't know. I've been thinking about this a lot. I don't know if he is as talented as Shea Patterson is, but Jordan Ta'amu plays within the offense better. He appears to be
Well, Shea Patterson, if I remember correctly, was the Jesus of college football.
All hail Shea.
All hail Shea. And if Shea would play as if he were Shea Patterson and not Johnny Manziel, I think he'd be really good. But I mean, it was like he had that one game against Texas A&M where it was like, oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. And then after that, it was just like, I'm going to snap the ball and then just like run a figure eight in the backfield and then get sacked for a 30-yard loss. Jordan fits the offense a lot better. Jordan seems to be a much better leader. So he kind of got command of the huddle better. And Jordan's a better runner, which I don't think they're going to want him to run just a ton because the backup, Matt Corral, should be really good, but it's probably not going to be ready this year. And then obviously, what can you say about A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, and DeMarcus Lodge? I mean, those guys are I don't know if there's a better 3 receiver combo in the country. And then, Braylon Sanders is the number 4 guy, and Braylon Sanders is really good too.
And then you throw in someone like the tight end Knox.
Yeah. You got Dawson Knox and then Octavius Cooley. I'm actually very excited about Octavius Cooley. I watched him play several times in high school, and every time he stepped on the field, he was the best athlete on the field. And they've said from reports and stuff, he's really turned. He's lost a lot of weight. He's really committed to working on his hands and really is just starting to finally have the light turn on for who he can be as a tight end. So, the offense is really good. The big question mark is who's going to be the running back. Jordan Wilkins had maybe the sneakiest 1,000-yard season ever.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to tell you that he had that until I read some reports.
So he, he's actually pushing. He's pushing the starter in Indianapolis this year to maybe be the starting running back for the Colts, which I love Jordan. I thought he was a great player. I didn't think he'd be that good that quickly. So, but he last year had a year where he was healthy and had everything kind of in order and played really well. So who are you gonna fill that gap in? And it sounds like Scotty Phillips is going to be the guy. He's a junior college transfer from Jones County.
JC?
Yeah, JC. But Eric Swinney was a 4-star recruit who has had some injury trouble, but seems to be healthy. And then you've got Isaiah Woolard from PCS down in Hattiesburg, who's looking to be the number 3 guy. And so I think you don't have to have one of those guys be the stud running back who gets 1,500 yards. Really,
definitely a more by committee sort of situation.
Yeah. If you can put those guys together in a committee and average 70 to 80 yards a game, well, then you've got then you can't double those receivers. And if you've got those receivers in single coverage, you're gonna put up some points.
Yeah.
So sure. that part of it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And that'll be a lot of fun to watch. I mean, the defense is the exact opposite.
Right. That's kind of the big thing that stands out is.
Yeah. I mean, you've got some talent on the defensive line. You've got a couple of guys. I mean, you got Josiah Coatney, who is really good. You've got I'm blanking on the guy's name from Wayne County. Oh gosh, he was a 5-star. I can't remember his name. Anyway, he's really good. But those guys have got to stay healthy, which they've not really done yet. And then you've got a handful of defensive ends. You got Ryder Anderson, who came on last year, but he's got to develop a lot. You've got Kadir Shepard, who should be good, but has been hurt both years he's been on campus. Victor Evans, same thing. So you've got a lot of guys that are unproven. That may be Benito Jones. Benito Jones is the 5-star guy I couldn't think of. That's defensive tackle. So defensive line, there's some talent there. But I mean, they got to stay healthy, and they've got to get deeper. Which this is not the time of the year where you're like, oh, we'll add talent. That just doesn't happen that way.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Your secondary is fine. They're not great, but they're not terrible. I mean, Jalen Jones. I think his name's Jalen Jones. Really good corner. The problem is I can't name a single linebacker. I don't know of any. And,
right.
And they lost their best 2 linebackers from last year, who DeMarcus Gates, who in his own right was a really, really good linebacker. I was watching some games from a couple years ago this week, and he was just all over the place making plays. But that was also when you had Robert Kimdichie up front and Sinquez Golson and Cody Pruitt behind him, so he could kind of freelance and make his plays. But they lost him, and they lost Taylor Polk, who, God bless Taylor Polk, but he was a walk-on. I mean, he was 5'9", maybe 185 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so and you lose that.
I mean, it seems like it's going to help out their scheme that they're trying to apparently play a little bit more of a 4-2-5 and not even mess with having much of a linebacker presence, which seems like it could theoretically help if there's a lot of depth there. But is there enough secondary depth to back that up?
No, depth is really. I mean, depth is as much of an issue as talent is on that defense. There's just not a lot of depth there, and that was really the flaw in Hugh Freeze's recruiting approach. Was that if he had the chance to go and get a 4-star wide receiver who's fit like all the 6'3", 200 pounds, really strong, 4-star guy, he would go after that guy instead of your really reliable. May not ever be all SEC, but would be a good 4-year starter for you, 3-star linebacker. And the example of that is Avery Genesee Avery Genesee, who played at Memphis. He's from Grenada, wanted to play at Ole Miss, and Freeze passed him up for some higher rated players who never panned out. So Freeze just was awful at recruiting linebackers, and so this is the defense that he built. And really, the only reason that I'm sad Hugh Freeze is not still the coach at Ole Miss is because he's not going to get blamed really for next year when the complete lack of defensive recruiting and the shallowness of the recruiting, even on offense, shows up. Matt Luke's got to find a way to win, 6 or 7 games so that he can get some momentum, because there's a lot of really good defensive talent in the state this year, in the state of Mississippi. And so if you can get some of those guys, if you can get, say,
it's whether or not it's an enticing enough situation.
If you can get a Kobe Dean or a Derek Hall, some of those guys, then then he's in really good shape. And I don't think that the drop off is going to be quite as great. But if you sputter to 5-7 and it's just not really that exciting, and there's just some trouble there, it's going to be hard after this year.
Yeah, so I got to be honest with you. I zoned out for probably about 10 minutes of that.
Totally fine. Totally fine.
No, so Keith, I do have this question for you, kind of piggybacking off of what we had talked about in the last episode. This is, you had a situation last season. Now that we do have the scouting report, and I'm just kidding, Chandler. Obviously, I had asked you to give us a scouting report. But now that we do have the scouting report, Keith, last season in a way seemed to be a team that was going through adversity and bonded together to overcome that, and that really helped out in a lot of ways. Now that is sort of behind them, obviously there's still a little bit of the fact they can't qualify for a bowl game, whatever it may be, still hanging over their heads. But with that behind them, is this something that they can that they could actually work through and have a successful season? If last year they're able to kind of galvanize under pressure, what does it look like? What do you think the mentality of this team and this season is going to be?
Yeah, I don't know what constitutes a successful season for them this year. Like Chandler said, if they kind of reach out to six or 7 wins, I feel like that would be considered a success. But you always wonder how you motivate a team to play when there's nothing to play for, per se. Past league play, right? But Matt Luke found a way to motivate his guys last year, and they had what I would consider to be a successful season after what happened, last summer.
Yeah, I mean, sitting here this time last year, because this time last year, Freeze had been fired maybe a week earlier, and I would have said 3-9 tops.
Yeah,
and the fact that they won 6 games and really had a great chance to win 2 more of those that they lost. It was a pretty impressive coaching job last year.
It was probably the best that you could do given the circumstances, sort of the situation, in a lot of ways. Ro, this is looking in light of where the rest of the SEC West stacks up. Let's say that we do have this, the offense firing on all cylinders like it looks like they could. Let's say that Jordan Ta'amu does, come out here and he's ready to be the guy from day one, and he shows it, and it's great. The wide receiving core lives up to their depth. The tight ends, come in as the the next options, and it works out well. Offensive line galvanizes. There's running back by committee. All the offense goes right. Do they have enough there in a best case scenario to move up from where they are right now and become one of the better teams in the West at the end of this year? That then by this time next year, they build off of that. What do you think?
To answer your question specifically, no.
Okay.
If you liked the last 2 seasons in Ole Miss, all right, you're gonna love what's coming next. Roughly the same season. I think it's gonna be pretty much the same as last year. What's funny about Ole Miss for this next year, or rather one thing that often gets overlooked with these awesome offenses or whatever, is like Ole Miss last year put up a lot of numbers. Like they actually did really, really good on offense. But that little time clock thing, that time of the game is kind of important. Like I think I saw somewhere that Ole Miss only had possession of the ball maybe 25 minutes, which means that your defense is on the field the rest of the time. So I would say probably the key to any success or having to win a couple more games this year, because I think they're probably going to get about 6 wins again. But I think if they're going to get that 7 or 8 win season, they're going to have to actually just manage the clock better and keep the defense off of the pitch there, as they say in soccer.
Like they moved too quick last year.
They move so quickly, and the other reason for that is because last year Ole Miss's defense was like the last in SEC for run defense. So every team figured that out very, very quickly early on, and we're like, well, let's just run the ball. Their offense is pretty incredible. Let's just run the ball and see what we got here. And that's roughly going to be the same this year. Hopefully they'll learn from their mistakes and they'll see that, hey, we need actually to have a few series put together. Don't just run down there and score and give the ball to A.J. Brown every single time. While they could do that, that would be really awesome and so exciting to watch. It'd be so much fun. It doesn't translate into the win column in my book. So I think it's going to be more the same. Hopefully they, don't go overboard with Jordan Ta'amu to A.J. Brown, which I honest to God, I am very excited about watching those two develop because A.J. Brown is a freak. He's awesome. He's totally going to be playing on Sundays. So that's going to be fun. It's just do a long commercial break whenever Ole Miss scores. Do a very long extend, like maybe go make a milkshake or have a beer, maybe clean your house a little bit and then come back for the next series. So that's my take on Ole Miss.
I think you're definitely right about that. But I think that the interesting thing about that the stats don't necessarily show there is that about halfway through the season, it was definitely still Phil Longo's offense. He was still calling the shots, but Matt Luke really kind of put his hands in the offense a little bit more, and that was where they really started to incorporate Jordan Wilkins more. And so if from the jump, if they can get the production, like take the Texas Tech game for example, like that's the first game of the season, that could potentially be like a 270 to like 263 game. And it can last 8 hours, and there's going to be 1,000 passes thrown. Like that's possible. But if Ole Miss can utilize the running game a little bit better earlier in the season, then I think maybe that turns out a little bit differently, and you can find that one or two that one or two extra wins. I think 6-6 is the ceiling, so I'm not saying this is going to happen. But I think that if they can utilize that running game a little bit more like that, then the defense is maybe off the field for one or two more possessions. Find that one or two more plays to get that turnover or to get that stop, and maybe they don't jump from terrible to like really good, and they don't even really jump from terrible to mediocre. But maybe they jump from terrible to bad, and that's a little bit better. So
well, they have that nice. So their schedule's okay this year. Ole Miss's schedule's okay. Alabama they lose, LSU they lose probably. I mean, you never know. But they're gonna win the 3 with whatever their
so
Division 3 schools, whatever it is. I'm trying to look it up.
They've got Texas Tech.
Texas Tech.
I think they win that.
Yeah.
Southern Illinois, which is a win. Alabama's a loss. Kent State's a win.
I'm sleep on Kent State, dog.
I've got a lot. Whenever we talk about LSU, I've got a lot to say about them. So I'm calling that a toss-up.
Toss-up. All right.
Louisiana Monroe's a win. At Arkansas is probably a toss-up. Auburn's a loss. South Carolina comes to Oxford, which is loss, but I'm giving it a toss-up.
I'd give that a 50-50 shot, man. That South Carolina's not going to be great.
They've got at A&M, which is probably a loss. They go to Vanderbilt, which is a win, and then they close with the Egg Bowl in Oxford, which I mean. State's more talented. State's definitely more talented, but that game's always a toss-up. I mean, State was more talented even with their backup quarterback last year, and Ole Miss still won. So, I mean, it's the schedule's not. It's not
you
easy,
were really
but it's not
quick
brutal.
To give Ole Miss a win over Vandy.
Look, by the time you get to the second to last week of the season, Derek Mason is going to be fired.
Right, and then a new guy comes in and just lays it on.
I looked at Vanderbilt's schedule, and they literally have one game that I predict them to win.
Oh man!
Thanks again for listening to this specific individual team preview. If you want more content like this, be sure to subscribe to Running Out the Clock so you don't miss any more of our SEC previews leading up to this season. You can find the full episode that this comes from by searching for our 2018 SEC Preview full episodes. And you'll want to listen to that because we give a verdict at the end of whether or not we feel like the team mentioned will do better, worse, or stay the same. For Running Out the Clock, I'm your friend Joseph Craven. Thanks for listening.